him to watch what he's drinking. You shouldn't drink too much. Anyway, just a little story from heaven. A little secret. So what exactly is Hasidus? It's very interesting that it's a minhag, actually, that from time to time, during the 200 and some years since the Alter Rebbe, that Chassidim asked the question, was is Chassidus? Was is a Chassid? So the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, when he was a child, that there was a Fabrengen, and many of the great Chassidim came to the Rebbe Rashab, and he would sit in on the Fabrengens, and he heard them asking, what is a Chassid? And he was a little shocked. Big Talmidei Chachamim, learned a lot of Chassidus, long white beards, and they're asking, what is a Chassid? So he said to his uncle, I know what a Chassid is because my father told me last year. This when he was around 6. So I already know what a Chassid is, and these older Chassidim, they don't know what a Chassid is. So his uncle said to him, your father told you what a Chassidl is, but they're discussing what a Chassid is. And he didn't like the answer. At 6 years old, he didn't like the answer. Chassid is a Chassid. What's the difference with age? So what is a Chassidl and what is a Chassid? Until finally, his father said to him, a Chassid that is mekusha to a Rebbe with true hiskashrus is far from being a Chassid. I think the expression was, I wouldn't call that a Chassid. A Chassid is somebody who was mekusha and devoted not only to the Rebbe, but to the Rebbe's inyanim, to what is important to the Rebbe. So what's important to the Rebbe becomes important to you, that's a Chassid. Later on, the Rebbe describes, hearing from older Chassidim, that what is a Chassid? A Chassid is somebody who is committed to helping others, always looking with tevas hazulas. And he told the story of a man who lived in a shtetl where there were big chassidim who would sit and learn on a deep, high level, but then there were also simple people who would sit in beis medrash and they really didn't understand. So he devoted himself to teaching them. But he had a problem because he wasn't very articulate. It was hard for him to express himself or to explain things. And then when his father passed away, this man, this chassid, when his father passed away, from the grief, he became completely incapable of expressing himself. He went to the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe his problem. And the Rebbe told him that he should continue teaching, and that he gave him a bracha. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, anybody who remembers this chassid remembers what a pleasure it was to listen to him. Peh mapik margolius. When he would explain something, it was like pearls of wisdom. He was so articulate. He had such a command of the language. And he expressed himself so well. And the Rebbe concludes, so you see the schar that comes for being devoted to the benefit of others, because he so much wanted to help the people who were not learned, that he was blessed with this incredible gift. So now, what do we know about a chassid? We know that a chassid is devoted to what the Rebbe is devoted to. And we know that he is devoted to doing for others. That's a chassid. Lifnim mishuras hadin. I just want to mention that the Frierdiker Rebbe's sichos, the Likutei Deburim, and the sichos of each year, that is the Chassidische Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos is the wisdom and the musar and the training of midas and seichel that came from the Chazal. And the Frierdiker Rebbe's sichos, that's the Pirkei Avos of a chassid. So the Frierdiker Rebbe tells a story that he was traveling as a young man. He was traveling with his father, and they came to a place, a Chassidische shtetl, and I think it was the Barditchever, I believe Yitzchak Barditchev, was coming to visit. And the whole community was busy preparing the shul in honor of the Barditchever. Old men were running back and forth with mops and with buckets of water and with brooms and he asked them what's going on. And they said that everybody wants the schus of doing something to prepare, to prepare for the Barditchever Rebbe. In fact, there was one wealthy man who offered to pay all the food for all the guests if they honored him, if they gave him the schus of using water from his well, the well that was on his property. Although there were closer wells that they could use and they would use, he wanted the schus that his well, his water should be used in washing the Beis Medrash for the Barditchever. So the Rebbe Rashab asked the older chassid who was telling them all this, he asked him, where are the young chassidim? You see older adults, but you don't see any young chassidim involved in the project. And the chassid told him that a young chassid needs to know his place and he should sit quietly and watch how older chassidim behave. On their trip home, the Rebbe Rashab said to the Frierdiker Rebbe that the concept of giving up a ruchnizdike, a spiritual benefit for a younger chassid, that is a uniquely Chabad mentality. That even your spiritual benefits, you have to have a little mesiras nefesh for the younger chassid. And of course, we know that the Rebbe built his army and his whole melucha on young chassidim. At that same time, they heard the story from one of the chassidim there of Reb Meir Premishvane. Reb Meir Premishvane, we all know the story that there was a hill, a very steep hill, that you had to climb to get to the other side where the mikveh was. So in the winter, when the hill was covered with ice, nobody could climb up that hill. They had to go around the long way to get to the mikveh. But Reb Meir, he walked up and down the hill as if it was nothing, even in the most icy conditions. Somebody came from out of town and they told him this amazing thing, and he was not a believer in Chassidus and Kedusha. So he said, oh, if the old man can do it, I can do it too. And he started walking up and he kept sliding down and he hurt his leg. It was impossible to do it. So they asked him, Meir, how does he do it? How is it that he walks up a steep hill on an icy day and he doesn't fall down? And Meir Mishlaner said, as mis zugebunden Eiven fällt man nicht herab unten. If you're well connected, if you're tied to what's above, then you don't fall down. Meir, he said, is tied to above, so he doesn't fall down, if I'm referring to himself. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes that when he heard the story, he really liked it. On the way home, his father, the Rebbe Rashab, said to him, that story about the Meir Premishlaner, that doesn't really describe a Rebbe. That's not the description of a Rebbe. That's more like the level of Hillel Paritcher. Because by a Rebbe, he doesn't have to be tied to above in order not to fall. He has no shaykhs to falling. So reading these stories from the Frierdiker Rebbe, you get a picture of what a chassid is really all about. And you find these qualities today in people who are not from Tashkent, people born in America. And yet Chassidus has successfully been transferred from generation to generation, and it is completely intact and alive in our time for young Chassidim. For Peretz Mochkin's grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Chassidus is there. All of these virtues, all of these qualities of Chassidus. So Raizel, as you all know, or maybe you don't know, embodied what a chassid is. And it's not just nice person. There are many nice people without chassidus, before chassidus. But there's something about what chassidus does for a person that is so real, and it settles into the bones and becomes a reality, so that it actually is inherited by the next generation. Now, I don't know whoever planned this series of programs. I don't know if they were aware, but today is the yahrzeit of my mother. Aleha Hashalim. She was from Russia, and she had all the qualities of an old chassid, of an Amoliker chassid. But that is not that surprising, because she came from the old country and she was from that generation. But to see it in a young person born in America, where people said it will never happen, that in America Chassidus is not the real thing. It is. It is the real thing. So I just want to learn a little idea, a little Chassidish idea. Before Tanya, before the Alter Rebbe, people understood that the challenge in life, the purpose of Torah and mitzvahs, is that we have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov. One draws us to good things, and the other draws us to bad things. And that struggle is the whole story and the whole purpose of life. If you win the struggle, you go to Gan Eden. And if you lose the struggle, you go someplace else. And the Torah was given to help us in that struggle. So the entire Torah is to support the Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara, so that a person will do mitzvahs and not sins. The Alter Rebbe came and introduced a whole new view of reality. Our struggle is not between a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov. We're not constantly standing on the threshold trying to decide whether to do a mitzvah or to do an aveda. That is such a negative and depressing view of life, of human beings, of Jews. The Alter Rebbe said, the Yetzer Hara, that's your problem? Daily? Constantly? And overcoming a Yetzer Hara is a big achievement? That's embarrassing. If you can kill your Yetzer Hara and never hear from it again, you would be perfectly fine. A Yetzer Hara is not essential to life. Chassidus says that what the struggle is all about is the choice, the tension between a human soul and a godly soul. So the challenge is not, will you do a mitzvah or will you do a sin? A sin is forbidden. It's off the agenda. It's possible to fall, to slip, to have a moment of weakness, but to say that that's life, it's not life. The struggle is between a nefesh alikis and a nefesh habahamis. What is the difference? Because sometimes it gets a little confusing. Yetzer Hara, nefesh habahamis, it sounds like it's the same thing. But it's not. You can live without a Yetzer Hara. You can't live without a nefesh habahamis. You're not a human being. So the nefesh habahamis, we call it an animal soul, but really it's the human soul. It's what makes a human being human, not an animal. It's only called animal soul because its midas, its emotions, are stronger than its intelligence. But really, it's an intelligent soul, and it's a human soul. It's not a godly soul. It's not a chelek elokah mimal. So here's the real challenge. The real challenge is you can be a human being, a decent, kind, wise, generous, even have mesiras nefesh for another person. You see this in human beings all the time, through all of history. That's a real mensch. Or, since you have a godly soul, you can be a godly being, something more than human. So here's the beautiful idea. The world is made up of daimim, tzemeach, chai, and medaber. The mineral, the vegetable, the animal, and the human. If we understood properly, if we had a delicate, edle view of nature, of the physical world, here's what we would see. What is a mineral? What is a stone, water, earth? What is that? these things that don't seem to have any life. So the Rebbe says, Friedrich Rebbe, what is a mineral? A mineral speaks. It says, makes a statement. A vegetable that has a little bit of life, a vegetable sings. It's a song. An animal is grateful for its existence. A human being is always looking for something higher. That's nature without the godly soul, before we even get to the godly soul. Let's take another look. A mineral is a statement. A vegetable is a song. An animal is grateful. And a human being wants something higher. A mineral is a statement, a stone. What is a stone? A stone basically says, I am. Here I am. I exist. That's all it does. Because it is responding to the statement that created it. How was a stone created? Yehi stone. The Eibishter said exist. So it exists. What else does it need to do? It was told to be, so it is. So what does its existence consist of? A statement. That's called a daemon. That's an inanimate object. Why doesn't it have a life? It's just responding to what it was told. It was told to be, so it is. But when the Eibishter created the world and said, let there be, there was a pleasure for him, for the Eibishter. There was a pleasure with which he created the world. Kol asher chofetz Hashem osa. He made it with a chayfetz, with a desire. A vegetable picked up some of that pleasure. So when the Eibishter created vegetable, grass, plants, trees, it not only responds to what was said, yehi or teitzi ha'aretz, but it also picked up some of the pleasure in existing. It's also interesting that the grass didn't come out of nowhere. The Eibishter didn't say, let there be grass. He said, let the earth produce grass. So because there's a little bit of pleasure that the Tzemeach is reflecting, or is that's why it grows, it blossoms, it has a wonderful smell, and it has bright colors. These are all signs of pleasure. The animal picked up or expresses more of God's pleasure, and therefore the animal not only enjoys its existence, but will fight for its existence. And it is grateful to be alive. Or in different words, it knows it's alive. The vegetable doesn't know. It just is. And it's an expression of a little bit of Hashem's pleasure in create. Okay, so the mineral just exists. It's a statement. The vegetable enjoys existing. The animal is grateful to exist. It has great pleasure in being. Then there's the human being. The human being, the Rebbe says, wants something higher. To put it in other words, the human being is human, but he's not content. He doesn't get pleasure from being human. The real pleasure that a human being gets is if he becomes something higher than human. So what is the difference between the human being and the other three? The other three are content. The mineral is content just to be. Doesn't want to grow, it doesn't want to have color, it doesn't want to have a good smell. It's perfectly okay just being. The vegetable enjoys being a vegetable. So if you don't cut it off from its roots, if you don't destroy it, it's perfectly content. The animal loves being an animal. It is devoted to being an animal because it's perfectly content as long as you don't shoot it or chase it or cause it pain. It's perfectly happy being exactly what it is. The human being is completely different. The human is created to be human, but he's never content being human. And that's just nature. That's without a godly soul. So how great can a human being be if he recognizes, or she recognizes, it's not enough to be human. That was given. That's not my accomplishment. So if I'm a perfectly human being, I haven't accomplished anything. In fact, a human being who says, I'm perfectly content. Just leave me alone, live and let live. Don't tell me what to do. Don't give me your opinions. Just leave me be what I am and I will be happy. That's literally an animal, not a human being at all. So imagine a human being who knows just to remain how you were created is not human. That's for animals and trees and minerals. A human being must achieve something more. Elevate yourself. Attach yourself to something greater. And that's why human beings look for causes. They want to be involved in big things, to change the world, to fix the world, to save the world. Where is all that coming from? It's not enough to just have what you were given. A human being is not content being human. So you can become a pretty impressive creature. Pretty impressive creatures. And that's all without the godly soul. Now, you have to add to those four kingdoms, the mineral, the vegetable, the animal, and the human, there's another creation, and that is the Jew. A Jew is a godly soul that is stuck, sharing a body with a human soul. What is the purpose? The purpose is to turn some of the human soul into godliness. To elevate a human soul into godliness, that it becomes godly. It doesn't just serve a godly purpose. It actually becomes godly. How is that possible? Because the human soul is already looking for something more, just by its nature. So when the godly soul speaks to the human soul or the animal soul and says, you know, a mitzvah is a divine thing. It's Ratzon Elyon. It is one with him. The human soul that has always been looking for something higher finds that really impressive and appealing. And slowly, it merges into the godly. So take a look at the difference. We came from being pathetic creatures on the verge of sinning at every moment. The Yetzer Hara takes us and makes us, and we can't control it and we can't help it, and it's a fight to the finish. And if you don't win, you go to Gehenna and you burn. And 3,300 years after the giving of the Torah, and that's where we're at. We're still struggling not to kill, not to steal, not to commit adultery. We're still there. The Alter Rebbe elevated us into a much more elegant struggle. A struggle that a human being can be proud of, not ashamed of. As a result, the Yetzer Hara gets very little attention. It's much easier to dismiss your Yetzer Hara when you know that there's a more important and more elegant battle that is worth your energy and worth your struggle. So the Yetzer Hara becomes completely distasteful and is sidelined. It's dismissed. We're not constantly on the verge of sinning. But in order to appreciate all that, not only did the Alter Rebbe have to find a whole new understanding and reveal a whole new dimension of Torah, he had to have Mesiras Nefesh to break through that, habit or conviction that the world is basically good and evil. That's all there is. You're either good or you're evil. So if you're good, it means you are not evil. And that's called good. Not quite. Good means godly. Evil means human. Doesn't have to be ugly and nasty. Evil means not trying to be godly. For a human being, that's bad news. So we should be very, very thankful. Not only did the Alter Rebbe give us a higher goal, a higher striving, liberated us from the limits of a human condition and what humans call good, he also made the battle much more enjoyable. The struggle in life is an elegant struggle. It doesn't degrade the human being. It doesn't tell you you're half human and half animal. It tells you you're half human and half godly. A human being can be very nice. But why would you be human if you can be godly? So that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating an elegant life. A short life, unfortunately, but a very elegant one. Nothing to be embarrassed by, nothing to be ashamed of. And such a role model that tells us all, we're not living in the gutter. You're not a sinful creature trying to behave himself. We're not animals. We can be very special, dignified, intelligent human beings and not be content with that. Because we're here to serve, not to remain what we are. So a human being is never content being human. What can he be besides human? If you don't know you have a godly soul, you're pretty limited. some people, because of the instinct, the subconscious instinct to be something other than what you were given, in their desperation, they become lower. They got to be something, right? They don't know how to get higher than human, so they go down to lower. They want to be able to fly like a bird, run like a deer, be strong like an ox. Nobody has ever gotten as strong as an ox. Nobody can run as fast as a deer, and nobody can fly like an eagle. It's going in the wrong direction. Knowing you have a godly soul, and knowing that every mitzvah is a piece of godliness, now we know how to be more than human. At this point in history, we have done so much godliness. We, meaning the collective we, the Jewish people, planted so many seeds of godliness that it's time for all of that to blossom. And when it blossoms, the human being will be more than human. The world will be more than natural, but naturally. So with the coming of Moshiach, all this potential, the good that has been concealed, and the superhuman, more than human abilities of a human being will all be revealed, and we will be as good as we can be, and that is awesome. Gute Nacht.